Hello, everybody. Welcome to the new seminar series by TrueMe Labs. My name is Elena Budowska, and I'm a founder of CEO of TrueMe. And today I will start this seminar series by talking about the most pressing questions that concern many of us. It's how to rejuvenate our body, at least stop aging, using our unique genetic and epigenetic profile. This webinar been inspired by you, your questions, your concerns that you raised over the years and submitted to TrueMe. So let's begin. How it's all started. It's all started with a problem question. We as a society, especially living here in America, we spend a ton of money, $1.5 trillion to be exact, on wellness routines that's supposed to make us younger and healthier. We're going to the gym, we're buying supplements, we can choose any diet we want to use, and we're spending a ton of money buying devices. All these tools and all this energy was spent with one purpose: how to make us age less, stay healthier. However, according to statistics, 2 out of 3 people by the time they reach the age of 65 will have more than three chronic conditions. Isn't it horrific? I think so. And how can we change this? Are we measuring the right things? Are we doing the right things for our bodies or not? And your questions actually inspired us to turn back to this problem statement and think about this again and explain to you how can you use our tools that we're developing to live longer and have healthier lives. Here I'm giving you two examples. One by Danielle from United States and Valerie from France. Both of them been one among our 4,000 users who took our epigenetic test that determines the biological age, the age with which your body really ages. And in both cases, these very advanced users who read a lot, who know everything about their body, can see that something is not quite working with them, for them. They think that they're healthy, but biological ages keep increasing. Are we wrong? Are we predicting a wrong number? So when I started this company, actually I had one user, let's call it patient number one, was my father, who had exact same question for me. He was 60 years old, in excellent health condition, affluent, intelligent, reads a lot about everything, and including his health. And the only thing he was diagnosed with vitamin B12 deficiency. Well, vitamin B12 deficiency, you say, well, it's a simple thing. You can just take a pill and you can become much younger very fast. No, unfortunately, it was not that simple. He tried a lot of therapies to actually figure out why he's still feeling bad and why his vitamin B12 deficiency still there, until I start really digging into his genetics and figuring out for him what he can do to improve his health. Why me? What makes me so important in this field? Actually, I have a PhD in molecular genetics from Ohio State University. I studied for years of how the cell grow and develop. And then when was finishing my doctorate, I actually become very interested in one question. Um, it's not about how we grow and how we develop, but why do we have to die? And I enrolled in a brilliant lab in Stanford University to study a genetics of natural aging process. I spent over 2 decades studying aging and longevity in different model organisms. I have been also leading my own research group in the University of Amsterdam, which concern not only about natural genetics process, but also about how microbiome influencing our longevity, how diet and exercise levels are important. And I created the theory of why can we age. And most importantly, before I test any theories, I realized that we need to have tools that help us actually determine our true biological age today. If we don't have tools to measure our biological age, we cannot move any further with any therapies, and we cannot develop actually therapies that really work in my lifetime. So, to start, I have developed a biological age test, what we call true age test. It's very basic. at home, saliva-based test. No pain, no needles. You just have to spit in a cart and send us your sample. In the lab, we process your sample and within 2 weeks, we submit you a results of your true biological age. If you perform this test every 3 to 4 months, you can see how fast you're aging from one point of measurement to another. And you can also record, as this person did here, what have you been doing during each measurement and see how this lifestyle interventions or maybe supplementations or diseases or life events that you encounter, how they affect your true biological age. As you can see that this graph shows that for this particular person, some diets do not work and another diets really rejuvenate them. If you have COVID, even asymptomatic, it drives your biological age very high, but it's temporarily. So it can return back to normal or back to where it was before you get infected with COVID. And also, life events such as surgery that some of us will have to go through actually do have an effect on your biological age. So, what are the reasons why some therapies work for one people and another's not? We found out that 2 out of 3 people who actually do develop these chronic diseases actually do not become any younger and are susceptible for the chronic diseases because of one of two major reasons. First, and you probably will guess what it is, most people actually follow health routine that does not work for their bodies. And it's very difficult to admit, especially after we read a very important information in the book or follow a very prominent scientist who tells us that something actually worked for them. Well, the second reason is very trivial. We are humans, and humans are the worst model organism ever created on this planet. We never follow the rules. We follow rules today and we break it tomorrow. How many of us started a diet on Monday, finished it Monday evening? So we cheat. And this is why our healthcare routine will not work. So what do we need? We need a way that will motivate us to actually enjoy our life and measure our progress, no matter how little it was, towards control of our health and aging process. But most importantly, let's enjoy our life. With this in mind, we developed our TrueMe epigenetic test. And before I go any further, I would like to tell you a little bit more what is genetics and what is epigenetics, because I can see that a lot of people are very confused about it. So, genetics is information that is encoded in your genes. This is what is in your DNA. If you think about a book analogy, genetics is every word in the book that tells you what kind of color hair you should have, what color eyes you would have, whether or not you're going to be tall or short, whether or not you're going to like music or like reading instead. Epigenetic modifications is the way how your DNA is modified. And this usually happens throughout your life. When you're living your life, the cell finds the way of how to regulate certain genes without really spending too much energy. Instead, what they do is putting small chemicals on the DNA to block expression of certain genes, and they remove those chemicals to activate the expression of those genes. Think about this. You're reading a book of your favorite recipes, and it's been read so many times by a person who was sloppy, who were cooking a lot of food with a lot of butter, and he put a lot of fat staining all over the book, right? So some words get smudged and it will not be readable. Can you still read the general information in your favorite recipe? Of course you can. Would you spend a little more time figuring out what each word would be? Yes, at the point that you will skip them and never read those words again. You probably will cook a nice meal, but it would not be perfect. So this epigenetic modifications is on your DNA is actually a response of your diet, your physical activity style, where you live, what kind of air you breathe, whether or not you have inflammation, or whether or not you're sleeping properly. All these different factors actually create their own modifications of your genome and helping your cells to read a proper area in response to this kind of external stimuli. So if you exercise a lot, you'll probably have a lot of happy genes open up. And if you don't sleep, the genes that are important for stress gonna be expressed, and you will need to take care of the stress as soon as possible if you wanna stay stress free. So how do we use this information? We actually devised a epigenetic test that looking at specific genetic location, specific words in your book, and see how heavily they modify. We literally count a number of modifications at each gene and put it in our algorithm. And our algorithm converts that to the number. And that number is actually corresponding to your cellular age or your biological age, the age of your that reflects your physiological state today. So in some regions, you're going to have a lot of modifications, like right here. And in some regions, you're going to have a few modifications. Each of these numbers will go into our algorithm and help us to determine your true biological age. So how do we use this information? Back to your use cases, back to information that you provided. So if we go back to the Valerie from France, who is like super healthy person, fitness instructor, have a terrific energy level. Everything is fantastic. One of the things that we determine analyzing her epigenetics is that she might not have an optimal sleep. And because she sleeps less, even though she tells us that she does not need more sleep, sleeping less is actually a stress for your body. And eliminating this stress will help you to become longer. Enormous amount of studies actually exist that point out that sleeping 7 hours a day is an optimal amount of time that you have to stay in sleep. And we know this is true because we already been through the same use case with our friend from Australia, Stacy. She also had ton of energy, was very energetic, but she did not sleep very long. And she was very disappointed when we give her advice, please make sure that you sleep 7 hours a day. Why? She said. I sleep 5 hours and I feel full of energy when I wake up, and I can actually continue with my day's work without any problem. So we suggested actually to adjust her supplementation that feel like was too stimulatory and maybe keeping her awake at night and shortens her sleep, and ask her to work very hard with our protocol on extending those sleep hours to 7 hours. She was blown away that she was sleeping longer, yet she became younger in the 4 month period when she was since she was tested. So this is one of the tips number one that I would like to give you. Even though you feel like your sleeping routine is optimal, please think again. Look at the quality of your sleep. Are you sleeping 7 hours every night? Do you fall asleep fast? Do you have trouble sleeping? Are you waking up a lot? Because sleeping long is actually very important for your health and longevity. It's keep your inflammation down, your stress level down, and overall makes you younger. Let's consider some more use cases. I want to go back to the Daniel I was talking about in the beginning. Daniel was brilliant. He read a very important book and he understood it, although he's not a biologist. And he took all the right choices for his health. He changed his diet, he started exercising, he even took some tips about cold therapy being very beneficial for your health. Fantastic. However, that did not cause him to decrease his biological age or at least stop aging altogether. It's actually increased his biological age. There are several explanations to this. One could be that he become too healthy too soon, and it's a stress. Every time when you're doing some radical changes to your body, it is a stress, and your body does need the time to adjust. And a long-term commitment to the health routine is actually the best way to stick to it, but also to ensure the maximum benefit. However, what Daniel forgot to mention to us that he actually had a mild COVID symptoms just before he submitted a sample that could contribute to this biological age. We also offered him to look at his genetics, and this is something I will describe in a minute. And when we looked at his genetics, we also find out that he is not really absorbing his vitamin B12 from food efficiently. So he might need to do it again and submit us another test after he adjusts his supplementation routine and recovers fully from the COVID infection. The same as happened to our other friends. For example, meet Rob. Rob is an athlete who is always exercising and living very healthy lifespan. However, when we first measured his biological age, he was 10 years older than his chronological age. Why is it so? He was very disappointed. We were very disappointed, and we wanted to figure out why exactly his biological age is so high. And what was happened is that he's he's not absorbing a vitamin B12 like folates very efficiently. And by adjusting his supplementation routine, we actually were able to lower his biological age. And here again, I show you this as an example that even small surgery he had a small surgery actually can drive your biological age high. So low level of inflammation, when left unchecked, can drive your biological age high. This was also confirmed by another friend of ours, David, who also, as our first friend, Daniel, um, changed his life, lost a lot of weight, adjusted his lifestyle, become much more healthier, and start following intermediate fasting. But that was not helping him until he adjusted his nutrient profile. He was also vitamin B12 deficient. I'm showing you this graph because he was also one of the people who was kind of thrown back on his healthcare routine by COVID infection. Aren't we all in the past 2 years? So this is something to be aware of, but this is a real power of through age test. You can monitor it every 3 to 4 months and actually see if something actually knock you off of the right course. The most important tip that most important information that I want you to take off from this section of my presentation is that please take care of your stress. Little stress, the surgeries, infection, lack of sleep is always associated with a little bit of inflammation. And inflammation can speed up your epigenetic clock and as a result your biological age test. But you probably saw from the previous use cases, especially the last three that I showed you, that there are much more interesting stuff that I can talk to you about. And in particular, what is that B12 metabolism? What is those folates, MHFR, whatever that I was showing to you? What exactly do they mean for your health and longevity? This is actually super interesting topic. And again, I'm gonna go back to my father because he had this issue for a long time. Being diagnosed with vitamin B12 deficiency on its own is simple. This is one of the most common vitamin. You can go to any pharmacy and buy ton of bottles. And that's exactly what he did. He went to local pharmacy and started buying vitamin B12. And no matter what he taken, he was feeling worse and worse and worse. Well, my father was lucky, I hope, because he has a geneticist as a daughter, and I proposed to him that it could be something wrong with his genetics that actually does not allow him to absorb this vitamin B12 from the vitamins that he can buy in a pharmacy. Indeed, that was true. My father was a carrier of a genetic variant. It's not a mutation. It does not make you sick or anything, and but it could contribute to it. So this a genetic variant, a slight change in your gene profile, and a slight change in your gene profile can make your genes more effective or less effective in performing certain function. In this particular case, this is a gene that is responsible for binding vitamin B12 from your blood and transporting it inside of the cell. Why is it so important? Because we, as humans, do not make vitamin B12. We're relying on another organism to produce it, and we consume it with food. So if we cannot absorb it from the food that we eat, it just goes through our body, gets removed as waste, and does not do any good for us. So we had to really work with him to correct his profile. I want to talk to you about Jason. Jason is one of our users, very advanced users, who reads a lot about longevity and participating in several studies on different anti-aging therapies. Jason decided to include in his regimen metformin, the drug that was previously developed as anti-diabetic drug. It was shown in various model organisms that this anti-diabetic drug can actually make you live longer. And there are ongoing studies right now on people who are taking this metformin. This is a healthy people who do not have diabetes, so they take this drug, and doctors following with all the biomarkers to see if they're actually aging fast or aging slower, or just pretty much monitoring all the physiological parameters. What's been noticed that metformin actually greatly depletes vitamin B12 from the bloodstream. Can you imagine if you combine this drug that removes the vitamin B12 from your body with a genetic mutation that not allowing you proper absorption? You probably can become a very severely anemic or deficient in vitamin B12 very fast. And this is what started happening to Jason. But because he's an advanced user and he's a part of many clinical trials, he actually went back to the doctors, took these blood tests, and actually were able to correct with our help with a proper supplementation his vitamin B12 levels. So why is it so dangerous? Why do we need to know about our vitamin B12 deficiency? As I mentioned before, vitamin B12 is not produced in our bodies. Vitamin B12 needed to be consumed with the food. Most of the food that contain vitamin B12 is not vegetarian. So if you're vegetarian, you could be at risk of having vitamin B12 deficiency if you're not supplementing it perfectly. This vitamin B12 absorption actually decreases with age. And if it decreases with age and cause anemia, we're going to start seeing any of the symptoms or all of them together. If it's a very severe anemia, you're going to start getting fatigued. Um, your brain is not working perfectly. You can call something brain fog. You might start losing weight unexpectedly or gaining weight. Sore throats in your mouth can develop, headaches, and blurred vision. It's just part of a few things that contribute to vitamin B12 deficiency. So why is it so important, and why I'm talking to you about this? Vitamin B12 is one of the molecules that actually a part of something we call one carbon cycle. It's a metabolic pathway in our body that takes the food and actually produce a lot of very important chemistry that is actually super important to regulate many processes in your body. So here, of course, it produces methyl group that added to DNA methylation is actually allowing the cell of using this energy efficient machinery to regulate gene expression. At the same time, this food, of course, extracting different amino acids that build proteins that build, for example, our muscles. It extracts some other components that builds our fats and hormones and signaling molecules that allow cells to talk to each other. So, how we take the food and extract all these important components from it to build us into us is super important. And that's why we need to know exactly how each of the steps of this pathway works. And I will make sure that in the next webinars, we actually talk in more detail about it so I can explain exactly what do you need to know and how do you need to, and what do you need to worry about to preserve the health and longevity. So the tip number 3 is very simple. If you don't know it already, please take a look at your folate, vitamin B6, and vitamin B12 metabolism. See if you can absorb this very important vitamin. If your body can actually take it from food, and if you're eating the food that contains them. And if you don't worry about it. There are smart people in the pharma industry that develop an active forms of these vitamins that even if you are, if you The smart people from pharma industry developed an active form of these vitamins. So even if you are deficient in absorbing of these vitamins, you can bypass this genetic variation and take care of your body. And again, stay tuned for more information in the following webinar. Why this third tip is so important and why I've been emphasizing it so much. Well, when I talked about vitamin B12 deficiency, one of the most important parts that any person who is getting older is really, really worried about, and it's a cognitive decline. And vitamin B12 is actually contributes greatly to this cognitive decline. My father, being a PhD in mathematics, was worried more about losing his cognitive abilities than any other health aspect of his life. This was super important, and he was really reading a lot about it and trying to take care of it. So, why is vitamin B12 deficiency in all this folate metabolism that I'm telling you about is actually so important to take care of your brain function? Because, in the first glance, is like totally two different things. Actually, they're not. Because vitamin B12 is actually related to your energy metabolism, and it's actually a key molecules that take your food, convert the food into energy. Vitamin B12 is important to of almost every step of the brain cell health, from myelinization and protection of these neurons from damage and from kind of spreading the signal all over the place, to actually building cells themselves. It's actually also important to convert stress molecules that produce in your body. For example, you might have heard homocysteine into and neutralizing and converting into methionine. Methionine is a protein that actually makes the cell. This way, it's kind of neutralizing this negative effect of homocysteine that actually associated with increased risk of cognitive decline. So having a proper concentration of your vitamin B12, not just absorbing, not just taking as a pill, but actually absorbed in your blood and functioning in your body is super important, not for your just energy level or your DNA methylation status, but also on how your brain will work and how your brain cells will be protected from external damage. So I would like to conclude this webinar and invite you to join us next time when we're going to talk about your metabolism. How's your metabolism is regulated? What is folate metabolism actually does for our rejuvenation? So why do we take such extra steps of explaining it to you, but also offering a genetic test to test your folate metabolism in particular? Also, I would like to dedicate one seminar in particular to talk about how to prevent cognitive decline, where the culprit comes from, where does it exist in our daily life, and I'm gonna tell you about things you probably never heard about and how they are actually affecting your brain function. But I would like to conclude this seminar and invite you to continue our conversation. We'll be happy to hear your comments, questions, concerns, maybe your stories at either our Facebook page or our Instagram page, or you can always contact us at contacts@trumelabs.com. I'll be happy to hear your questions. Thank you so much. And I hope 2023 will bring all the health and happiness to you and your family.